Good morning, it's Brian here. We are back again for another extremely important podcast. And that is extremely important if you are an investor and you like to get good returns on your money and you've realized that startup is the place to do that. Now, again, I remind everybody in these episodes all the time, we are not promoters. We do not find companies and say, this is a great company, you should invest. We are investors, and that means that we have put our money into companies like this in the belief that this company is solving a huge problem and is going to change the world. Just as importantly, it is going to change the world, and it is going to make a ton of money for the founders and for the investors in that company. That's the whole reason we do what we do. We get to make the world a better place, and we also get to make a ton of money. Now, if it goes right, what does right look like? Right looks like you buy in at a valuation of $5 to $10 million, and the company grows to a valuation of $1 billion. Thank you very much. Everybody makes a ton of money, and we're in great shape. So, as you're listening to this podcast, if you are a newer investor, if you're an existing investor, you know how it works. You want to build it up. We want to make sure we get more angels in, investors in, build up the valuation, build up the revenues, and get the company going great. If you are a newer investor, the things that we are always looking for is execution power of the founders themselves. We're looking at the skill gapping within the companies. We're looking at the route to $100,000 a month in revenue. We're looking for the size of the market. Can it contribute to a $5 to $10 million a month in revenue business? And finally, we're looking for the ability for the founders to be able to raise the money required to get to that stage. So we're going to cover all of those things on the podcast, and we're going to do it within the entire scope of building the hero's journey. So today on the podcast, I'm going to welcome Alberto and I'm going to welcome Jorge, two phenomenal entrepreneurs. We've invested in them. I know them really well. We're almost like friends at this stage. Well, we're like for investors. That's what we're going to call it, like, which is friends, but investors, because we know they're going to make a ton of money. So we're going to be very happy in the future. Company is Lyptus Medical. It is a phenomenal company. And again, you are going to realize the huge challenges that are being faced in the elder care market. It's just ridiculous. Actually, as we went through this, and this is not just Mexico, it is not just Latin America and Central America, it is all of the Americas and it is all of the world. There is a huge inequity between the percentage of geriatricians that exist, full stop, period, and the amount of people who are getting older and need the help of specialists to be able to make sure that elderly, that living to a longer age and living healthily is managed in a really good way. So I want to kick off, if I can, with Alberto. And because this is your world, this is your space, talk to us a little bit about how huge a problem that this actually is.
Oh, wow. It's very, very immense. It's a problem that is obviously not exclusive to Mexico. It's not exclusive to Latin America or to any kind of developing country. It's a problem that has become global. And the problem is that we just see aging as one of two things. You either grow old in a healthy and successful way, or you become unhealthy and therefore unsuccessful, which kind of sounds like you're unsuccessful in life. And that's totally unacceptable, right? And yet there are a few people, or a small percentage of people, that really do have the possibility of becoming successful. And they can do it because they have the means, they have the connections, they have mostly the money as well. But they do it outside of the system in many ways because they can navigate it easier. But the vast majority of population, especially those with lower incomes, they just have to resign themselves to the fact that they probably will make it. And at some point along their lives, they will be the less fortunate and they will have failed at their aging, right? So that has to do with just an error of perception, just this misconception that aging is twofold. There's just two sides to it. And really, aging is living. You can start living healthily when you're 10 years old, when you're 20 years old, when you're 30 years old, or when you're 75 or 85. You can always do better. Like the phrase is today is the beginning of today is the start of the rest of your life, right? It's not the beginning of the end, it's the beginning of the rest of your life. Every day is the beginning of the rest of your life, and you can always do something about it. So that's what we're about, and that's just the scope of the problem.
And you are a specialist. My wife is extremely knowledgeable within the Mexico space and knows healthcare, has known it for 25 years. And her words to me were one of the most renowned specialists in Mexico. So you come from a really, really high level from her opinion and from everybody around you. I know you'll be very humble because you are very humble, but it is what it is. If you're great, you're great. That's all it is. So have you seen this rising as a problem? Or has it always been the case? Has there always just not been enough people to take care of the folks that are getting older?
It's always been there. I mean, geriatrics is pretty much the most recent specialty in medicine. Like, it started in England and in France in the 1950s. It started in Mexico 1981.
Wow.
That was the first time, 1979 to be specific, but the first specialist program was in 1981. Everyone before that had been trained in France or in England. And so before then, all geriatric patients were treated as best they could by general practitioners, by internists, by surgeons, by whoever they could, but there was never really a specialty focused on them. So it's always been a problem, but it became a larger problem when the 20th century rolled in and we started looking at aging as this negative thing. Before then, older people were venerated, there was something to strive for. And then suddenly everything became about this cult of superficial, of beauty, of youth and everything. And all these negative things started to surround the idea of growing old. And even in the past 20, 30 years, major strides have been taken to change this at a global level, but still the concept is that it's a bad thing. And just so the incumbents really are just trying to kind of paint over the problem and not really getting to the core of it, which is that something is broken, and our conception, our mind tells us that we really don't want to know about aging. We really don't want to think about it. We really just don't want to be there. So we don't even try to imagine what it might feel like to be over 65 and to not have access to the comprehensive and personalized care you need. And to be told over and over again that it's just the inevitable. It's just the beginning of the end, and we just don't have what it takes to be healthy anymore.
And it's terrifying. And I want to bring in
Mm-hmm.
Jorge here because I want to realize you're both partners, both co founders in this business. I want to get to that moment where you suddenly realize, both of you, that there's something that needs to be done here. And more importantly, there's something that you can do to streamline the entire system and bring in technology that can provide solutions and hope to people as they are aging in care. Jorge, tell me a little bit about it. How did you both get involved? And when was the moment where you said, okay, this is a monster solution that we have to go after?
Of course, Brian, pleasure to be here with you. So I've known Chip since elementary school. Just that I went with his brother, and he's 2 years younger. So we know each other from a long time ago. But around 2018, I was struggling a lot with my parents. They're both elders. They're both dependent, and I was suffering a lot because I was learning on the fly how to take care of them. I was completely alone, and my parents were hospitalized pretty often, and that was affecting my life terribly. So I was looking at solutions, and I didn't find them in the market. And as an entrepreneur myself, I decided to try to find a solution. And the best way to start finding a solution was to touch base with an expert. So I knew Alberto was a geriatrician, so we touched base. And the moment we touched base with this, he told me that he was actually also looking to find a solution to serve a wider group of patients, to serve them better, because he, in his own practice, his own private practice as a geriatrician, was struggling. So that's when we decided to join forces. And we started working in a business model. And in the business model, we started investigating some of the most recent findings of the National Institute of Geriatrics. And for me, it was mind-blowing to know that in Mexico, well, at that point in time, there were only around 500 geriatricians.
Wow.
I mean, I have more Facebook friends or LinkedIn
I knew you were
contacts.
going to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, then there's geriatricians in the whole country, and most of them are only located in the main cities in Mexico. So if you go out of them, I mean, it's almost impossible. Then we realized that close to 40% of the physicians that announce themselves as geriatricians are not geriatricians. So we begin to find like a lot of things that were completely wrong, and that's when we realized that this was way bigger than my mom, my dad, and a bunch of people in my same situation.
And talk to me about how you then evolve that into a product. So there's a huge problem. There is a market opportunity. There's a way to come in. Like the 500 number is crazy. Like you said, Facebook friends. I'm thinking there's like more than that amount of people who dislike me in the world. Like that. That's how ridiculously small that 500. And we're talking about a huge population in Mexico. And obviously, when you talk about the fact that this was new in 1950s and only brought to Mexico just before the 80s, well, that's not going to be any different to other countries that are around the world as well. So this is a global problem that we're facing. We have generalists dealing with a very specialist population that require very specific care that's a million miles away from the general care that people are getting used to. So how do you solve it? What did you come up with? What did both of you, I'll let Jorge come out with it first of all. What did you both come up with on as far as a solution, and what made you believe that you could actually get this to market?
Well, previously I was also in the business of business. So I grabbed many of the frameworks that we already had, that I use. So I was drinking my own Kool-Aid. So with the help of Alberto and also of Miguel, our other co-founder, we sat down and we started working in some of these frameworks. One of them is called the value map. So we mapped the different stakeholders. So the stakeholders are not only the seniors, they're not only the geriatricians, they're also the family members, they're also the different physicians that are around in the country. So we try to understand which are their jobs, which are their objectives, what are the main barriers they have right now with the current offering that is in the market to successfully do those jobs. So we slowly began to realize things like a geriatrician, his consultation or her consultation lasts for 60 minutes, and other physicians do it in 20 minutes. So you're not in the same playing field. They both earn the same per consultation, but one does 3 times more. So we realized that we needed to increase the productivity of geriatricians at least 3 times in order to be in the same playing field. We realized that only 3 out of 10 patients go back to visit the geriatrician after the first visit. That's extremely low adherence. And we realized that many times this happened because they needed the assistance of one of their family members. They needed to go with them, they needed to pay for the consultation. And many seniors, they just didn't want to bother their daughter, their son, they're working, they're living their lives. So we realized that we needed to do this at their own home, that we needed to go to them. They didn't have to come to us. And at the same moment in time, in my business accelerator, I was working with a company that did telemedicine, like traditional telemedicine from clinic to clinic. And then it just clicked. Probably what we need is a company that could do telemedicine in the patient's house, so that we can have access to them directly, but also we would increase dramatically the productivity of the geriatricians by adding a very special figure, which is a general practitioner that is going to be in the house of the patient and is going to perform part of the consultation, therefore allowing the geriatrician to do these consultations in 25 minutes. So that's when we realized that we were onto something. We did a pilot. Actually, Chip's wife, the family own a chocolate factory. So we did our pilot initially with some of the workers of that factory, and it worked. So then that's when we started, and most especially I started applying this with my own family, with my dad, and it helped me in many situations.
Incredible. I just once you said chocolate factory, that was terrible. It brought me back to my childhood. I like, man, what kid gets their parents and family to have a chocolate factory? I think that's fantastic though. And what I really love about what you're saying here, you're saying previously the geriatrician was the violinist, was the percussion player, was the guitar player, was the flute player, and what you're doing is you're taking the geriatrician to be the conductor, right? And you're saying to the geriatrician, you're so important and there's so few of you that we don't want you asking the same 25 questions that anybody else can ask. We want all of these other beautiful musicians who are all really smart, great, incredible people. They just don't have that final 3% of insight that you have to make the right decisions and point them in the right direction. So actually, you're kind of doing a loaves and a fishes thing. Like you're turning one person into 300 people because now they can direct all of these different musicals in these different places. Very brilliant. Was that the vision that you had, Alberto, of what you wanted to create, or did it happen in many ways on its own?
It happened on its own. I mean, what I was trying to create at the time that Jorge and I got in touch, we started Lyptus and started working on it. I was thinking of trying to replicate the model of medicine that I had learned while I was in my residency training, which was, just a hospital that has specialized physicians in every corner, and where you have the residents that are working with the attendings, and where it's all educational, and all the patients receive everything they need at their bedside, right? And I was trying to do that in my private practice, which is impossible. Because in private practice, it's every man for himself kind of a thing, and it's really there's very little teamwork unless you actually form a cohesive team, and then you can only see a limited number of patients at the time because it all depends on how much time you have, right? So I was working on that. I was kind of kind of formed the idea in my head that this was what I was going to be able to do, but I was hoping to be able to do much more, because I kept seeing day in and day out all these patients come in just running from the healthcare system, looking for some other kind of attention, and just to maybe solve some problems, but hoping for something more as well. And when we started working on this with Jorge and with Miguel, we realized that we really could do a lot more, and that there was a possibility of becoming this group of people that was working together to bring back the teamwork factor, to bring back this experience of being in a teaching hospital where everyone is willing to learn and really wants to see the patients, because it's more interaction with patients makes them better physicians, but where you could also have a certain degree of supervision, and everybody learns from each other and everything. So we got that into Lyptus, and we also realized that we had to do one more thing, which I think is critical. And we needed to instill in our patients and their families, but also in our doctors and in our collaborators in the company itself, to have a sense of purpose towards their lives.
Right.
So it's no longer just living and seeing if I can hang on for a few more years. It's living with intention, with purpose, with the purpose of getting better every day, of being happier every day. We know it's possible because there's tons of research that show that there's an upwards curve into being happier when you're older. You're happiest when you're a child, then you go through middle age and you're least happy.
A whole life of misery, and then just
and then you go up
years.
again. Yeah. So middle age is when you have the most responsibilities, the most hard work, and everything. You go through that, and even if you're not the wealthiest, if you're not living in the dream life that somebody told you needed to have, you can still be the happiest you've ever been. But people are shying away from that idea because they think that they're just surviving. They just kind of checked out of the party room and entered the bye-bye room, which is where all the others and so we're trying to take them out of that. We realize we
love
have
that.
going purpose.
What a beautiful mission. Really, for goodness sake, what a beautiful. We work our asses off. when we're kids, we have fun, to your point, right? You have a couple of tough times, but we're supposed to have fun, right? And then we kind of hit that stage where it's like, okay, boys and girls, you hit like 19, 20, 21, time to get to work. You've done your college, get yourself out to the market. And then during that period, everything is about acquisition. It's just about acquisition, right? And you try and enjoy it as much as you can. But then you get to a stage where you're like, actually, I now have my kids have maybe gone. Maybe there's grandkids, which are easy peasy. Like grandkids are easy peasy. Like you see them every now and again. Then you send them back with their parents again. The happiest moments ever, right? And then you don't have to worry so much about going to work because people don't put the pressure on you. They don't have the expectations of you working the crazy hours that they would have with the folks that are coming through. So a lot of the outward pressures and inward pressures where things are less important than they seem before are gone. So your whole mission is positioning people in the very best time in their lives when their insecurities have gone, their worries have gone, their kids have gone, their grandkids are popping in every now and again. And even if they don't have kids or grandkids, they're in a place where the stuff that seemed important they now know is utter crap and it is of no relevance whatsoever, and they're happy there. But they're not able to live that great life. And what you're saying is we need a specialist in here that helps them live that great life. We do it on telehealth. We're maximizing the efficiency. We're maximizing the automation. And we build a platform to get it through. I don't think there's a person in the world, from a grandson to a son to a person who is aging gracefully, who would not say, God bless you. That is exactly what we should have had 40 years ago, right? But it's being put in place now. Talk to me about, so nobody disagrees, right? Everybody's in on this. I think the general practitioners are in on it. The geriatricians are in. Everybody is going to like this. Talk to me about the barriers and the obstacles that you have faced, some of which may have been expected, some of which will have been unexpected, because no matter how frictionless a technology is, and yours does seem frictionless, there are going to be Murphy's Law attributes that are going to come in and just kick you in the backside. Speak to me about some of them. Maybe if we bring Jorge in here, and talk to me, Jorge, about how yourself and Alberto have managed to overcome those.
Yes, well, there's one of the greatest barriers that we have encountered is that nobody knows what a geriatrician is. You would think, hey, maybe, this is a huge issue. Maybe the government, someone has to launch a campaign to tell the general population what a geriatrician does, why is his physician important. And because there's not enough geriatricians, so then you're just gonna set things up for failure. So that's one challenge. And the other challenge is, okay, once people are convinced that they know that they need a geriatrician, the second thing is that they're not used to seeing a geriatrician on a distance. Even though we have a physician that is there, that is taking the medical intake, the physical examinations, they still believe that the value added of the geriatrician is like their hands, their sight, the things they can see, the things they can perceive, and not their expertise in terms of diagnosing and giving treatments. So receiving calls from people interested in our services and trying to address those two issues it still has been a huge deal.
By the way, this is ridiculous. Like, it's even a ridiculous conversation. It's so ridiculous. As you age, your everything about you is different to how you were when you were 30. Everything, like the fragility of our bones, our skin, the thing that affects our skin, the potential for actually being able to catch it, like literally everything is the same. And you can maybe argue that there's a necessity for a general practitioner that will have generality of knowledge to treat a person who's 30, 35 rather than specialists. You can argue that because it's in the mean average, right? But you just can't for people who are reaching a certain age. You just can't. It makes no sense whatsoever. Even logically, even without the government stepping in, it makes absolutely no sense for how people think about this. And it's just a behavior, right? People have had a behavior for 1,000 years, and they have this stupid mindset of the fact, well, I'll just go and see my doctor. It's like, why would you do that? It's like sending somebody who's got a Corvette to go down to the local garage to get their Corvette fixed. Like, you can do it. They know how to change oil and they know, but why would you? It's a Corvette, for God's sake. You send it to a Corvette specialist. So I don't know. It kind of makes me angry because it's so ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, Brian. It's like when you have a kid, you have a baby. I mean, you don't even think about it. You send them with a pediatrician.
Of course.
You don't go and tell them, hey, go to a general practitioner around the corner or go to a cardiologist. You go with a
like go to Dr. John. Dr. John's had a baby. He knows babies pretty well. He should be good. You'll be fine. Yeah, knock yourself out.
But when we age, and we have this bias towards aging, I mean, it's ridiculous. You blame on age, your ailments, and that there's nothing to do because you're aging. But at the same time, you're not old enough still to go to a geriatrician. I mean, you're offending me if you tell me that I need to go to a geriatrician. You're calling me old, and you don't go because then if you go, it means that you're accepting that you're aging and that you need a specialized doctor.
Wow,
so it's just,
isn't this crazy?
It's crazy.
What age should you go to a geriatrician at?
That's actually a very interesting question, because the World Health Organization has kind of divided in two specific ages depending on where you're from, which is absolutely arbitrary. If you're from a developing country, starting at the age of 60. And if you're from a developed country like the United States, Canada, Europe, then it's after 65. And that just tells you that there's no sense behind it. But the truth is, most people start experiencing what we call geriatric syndromes, which are the particular conditions that geriatricians are trained to identify and then treat, and have a lot to do with the particular diseases that they might have, but they're actually syndromes. And those you start to get around 65, 70, 75 usually. So most people start realizing that things are not working out the same way as they were around that age. So, but the truth is, the answer to the question, when should you start seeing a geriatrician? I'd say around 50, like before you even reach that age.
Absolutely.
Because you need to know what you're going to be perceiving in your body, not wait until it's finally there. Like when do you send that Corvette into the shop? When it's breaking down, or every 20,000 miles or kilometers, whatever it is, or after it reaches after you've had it for maybe a couple of years.
I think this is your opportunity. I absolutely think this is your wonderful opportunity. I had, a great example given to me earlier on today about erectile dysfunction and Viagra, and how erectile dysfunction was this terrible stigma that was faced and nobody even wanted to talk about it. And then Trojan moved it to this: you are a better man if you can take Viagra. Like, you will be the best that you can be. And suddenly it moved from this terrible stigma to very proactively making sure that people can be really healthy in their sex life as well. And so for where you're going to with this, that's the objective here. The objective here is not to tell people, hey, you're frail and you're old and you're not really going to make it very long, so you better make sure you get taken care of so they can watch out for all of the old stuff. It's like, no, you just got to wait another 5 years to reach the happiest moment in your life. Just 5 years away. See if you can hold on just a bit longer to get to that 5 years. I know you want to be there right now, but you have to wait. But we want to make sure that when you get there, you are going to have the type of life that a 30 to a 40-year-old would have had a couple of years back, like 20, 30, 40 years ago. And you can do that by making sure that you go to the folks who specialize in making sure that as you reach that age, you are the perfect human specimen. So that whole mindset, I think we need to drive. But I love the fact, I feel you're holding gasoline, or you're holding petroleum at a time when none of the oil fields are working, like you're the only ones with it. You have the geriatricians here. You're splitting them out perfectly. You're making a sum that doesn't work into a sum that does work, and everybody's going to get behind you. So I think that's great, Jorge, on the mindset. Anything else that is a barrier to breaking through? And if not, what does that breakthrough look like? How are we going to make sure that we get you out to every single Mexican out there, and then beyond that to everybody else in Central America, and beyond that to Latin America, and beyond that to the US itself? Like, there's literally no country that doesn't need this.
Yes, of course. We we need to start growing exponentially. We're doing this initially with B2C efforts, but also we're starting to do it through B2B2C efforts. So we're starting to work with large corporations that they are insurance brokers, they're pharmaceuticals, and they have realized there's a huge need and that there's a huge gap in the market, particularly in Mexico. Yes, you have some degree of public health alternatives, but there's almost no alternatives regarding private healthcare insurance. So for them, this is something novel, something that is needed, and they're eager to distribute it nationwide. We're also going to tap into something that is very important, Brian, and that's the strength of the family bound, bound in
bonds,
Mexico.
Yeah.
They there's over 30 million Mexican expats living in the U.S., or descendants of Mexicans, and every year they break records sending remittances down to Mexico. So even though they're still in the U.S., they're in the U.S., they still think about their relatives back home. So we believe that there's a great opportunity in putting this product in front of them so that they can deliver it to their loved ones down here in Mexico. And we plan to have the same strategy with the rest of the at least the countries in Latin America, and then the countries in the rest of the world. As the U.S. concentrates a lot of the immigrant population in the world, we can start this distribution system from the U.S. and working with large corporations that are global. Once we're successful in Mexico, then it would be easier to expand them to other regions.
Wonderful. And if we're going to quantify this, how much money are we raising right now? How much money of that is got to go towards the technology and improving that? How much of it's going to go to marketing? And how is that going to tie into the growth? And remember, as investors are listening to the podcast, they're all thinking to themselves, okay, if I invest in this company right now, everybody's going to get the mission, everybody's going to get the importance of the market, everybody's going to get the market size, and also everybody's going to get the fact that people will pay for this. I would pay for this from my mom and dad, as would anybody else outside. So talk a little bit about how much you're going to raise now. Talk a little bit about how that's going to drive your revenue and your users, and then how that's going to drive the valuation over the next 12 to 18 months, so investors can see what types of returns are they looking for, even if they're unrealized over the next year to 2 years.
Of course, Brian. So right now we're looking to raise $1 million. We're going to use approximately 25% of these proceeds to our technology. In particular, we want to finish developing our, that's going to be key for us, because we're going to be able to communicate better with patients, with their relatives. But the rest is going to go directly to marketing and also to strengthening our team to support our growth. We expect to reach $1 million in sales this year. We expect to get to at least 5,000 patients at the end of this year, primarily to the B2B2C segment. And also, once we get this network effect, we're not only going to have income from consultations, but also we're going to start adding other elements that add value. For example, medicine distribution. In Mexico, medicine distribution is very opaque. It's very hard to get medications, and it's key to have adherence to treatment. So we start adding several things that are going to increase our revenue. So we, in 2 years, we expect to have sales of $5 million, not only for having more patients, but also because we're going to have a much bigger customer lifetime value.
It's phenomenal. And Alberto, you want to layer on top of that, because for you, you could have kept your very comfortable lifestyle, very well respected within the community, one of the top specialists in Central America. But where do you see it now? If you're going to look at your legacy in 20, 30 years' time, and you're looking back about what all three of you have built, what does that look like as far as impact?
It really takes me to a place that I never actually thought I'd be able to go to before. I started focusing on geriatrics. I started my geriatric training 9 years ago, which may seem like a little time, but it actually feels like a lot. And I started my clinical practice 2 years later, my private practice, and I was just immediately hit with just the daunting task of really never being able to do enough for enough people. And that, as a doctor, as someone that's been studying for, by then, 17 years to really do a job, to really be of impact, to help people. That was just, somebody telling me, well, this is as far as you've come, and I just really was battling with that idea. And I know that a lot of my colleagues have had some similar problems. And now it's made me so happy, truly happy. I mean, you didn't see it, or maybe if you're watching and on the screen, and you can see, I was almost tearing up when you started talking about what we were talking about, and how you like this idea of purpose and all of this, because this is really what I've found. I found the road to actually being able to finally think I can reach the 2+ billion people right now that is estimated in Mexico that need a geriatrician above any other kind of specialist. But I can even think beyond that. I can think into Latin America, into USA, Canada, Europe. My dreams have become bigger than anything I've ever imagined, and I see us in that position in the not too distant future. I can see it, I can touch it almost in the horizon, and I just wake up every morning thinking, I'm just so happy that I'm doing this, that I didn't just stay and do what everybody else had done before me and just keep it simple and just go to my comfort zone. I know, I'm so glad I broke out of all of that, and I went into this thing that with Jorge and with Miguel, that has all these new challenges and all these new pitfalls and bumps in the road, but I can see very clearly where I want to go to.
In some ways,
the most excited I've ever been.
In some ways, you're really creating a prep school. If I go back to the old world of preparatory schools for young boys or young girls, right? You send them in for their prep school. You're really sending people who are hitting their 50s and their 60s into a prep school for the best life they'll ever have. Yep. And the challenge, and this is why I always feel desperately sorry for specialists, general practitioners, doctors, really on all levels, because really the entire job is so thankless, and it's so based on having to deal with the effects of decisions that were made a long time before they actually walked into your surgery. And that's very challenging, because it's every day, it's oh my gosh, okay, so I'm going to have another 7 people going to walk in today, and the only thing I can do is push off something that's already so far down the road that I can't do anything about. While in this moment, you're actually able to prepare the system you want to have. And I can't think of a better way to finish the podcast. I will tell you all, as investors, from my perspective, this is a healthcare system being created in the private sector, whereby they will have a membership program with hundreds of thousands of individuals, not just with kids who are paying for their parents, but parents who are paying for themselves, where they turn 500 people into 50,000 people, where they then get AI and bring it in and augment all of the services that are being provided by the geriatricians, by the general practitioners, by the nurses, by everybody else who are all contributing to providing the absolute best in care service. In a couple of words, it's frigging awesome. So how can everybody contact you? Either, and maybe just give one email out just so everybody's got it, but how can everybody contact you to make sure that if it's an investor that they are able to find out exactly how everything is going to work. They can dig into the business plan, the deck, and everything else. If it's somebody who's in the healthcare system, maybe somebody who knows the Mexican system, that they can actually connect with you and say, hey, I'd like to help you. These are the connections I have, and this is how I can actually impact. Or if it's somebody who's potentially a great partner and they want to come in and build together, they can also connect with you. Jorge, I'm guessing it's you.
Of course, no, we're happy to join forces with anybody that has the same mission, the same passion for this. Look, easy, they can go to our website, is lyptusmedical.com, but also they can contact me in my email. It's jorge.hinojosa@lyptusmedical.com.
And just do me a favor, spell that out for everybody who's listening. So obviously Jorge is easy, but
Jorge.hinojosa
wonderful.
lyptusmedical.com.
Yeah, Lyptus Medical, pretty easy. Lyptus medical.com.
And me, you can find real easily if you go on LinkedIn and look for Dr. Chip Palacios.
Easy peasy. You see, that was awesome. Hey, listen, thank you ever so much to both of you. It's a huge thing you're doing. As I said 1,000 times already, we're delighted that we're invested into it, and we're looking forward to this one becoming absolutely huge. Thank you, guys.